Hey guys, so our last weapon tier list was quite a while ago. It was the April update. The couple of previous tier list updates were also not quite full re-reviews or anything like that, but since it's been a while, we're gonna do a slightly more extensive update on every single exotic weapon, starting with auto rifles. Suros Regime is getting a B+ in PvE and a B in PvP. Suros continues to be one of the best auto rifle options in the game. However, auto rifles themselves are not in a very strong spot right now, nor have they been for quite a long time. The weapon is definitely usable in PvE, but you'll run into ammo problems if you're using spinning up. Suros in PvP can be very deadly with spinning up, but it isn't that reliable to get spinning up to proc in the slightest. It's a little slow for the current meta. Monte Carlo is getting a B in PvE and a C+ to a B- in PvP. This got a slight bump up from the April update in PvE simply because of the Titan build with Thagamizers and because Wrath of the Machine is a little more auto rifle friendly than King's Fall was. However, while a very stable weapon, it is not able to keep up in the current PvP meta. You'll find me saying this a lot for auto rifles, much like I've been saying for many months now. Hardlight is getting a C+ in both PvE and PvP. As far as I'm concerned, Hardlight is just a bad version of Monte Carlo, and there's not really too much else to say about it. Zalo Supercell gets an A- for PvE and a C+ to a B for PvP. A lesser bad juju, Zalo is a pretty good option for general PvE play, giving you loads of super energy and AoE damage. It is also the only 400 light capable primary with an element on it, making it a staple for anything arc burn related. In PvP, if you can get a proc of the lightning effect, then it can really put a hurting on some people in close range, but otherwise struggles to maintain any sort of actual presence. Fabian Strategy got a buff in the Rise of Iron update, giving it more range, stability, and an improved main bonus. However, even those somewhat considerable buffs didn't really do too much to bring this weapon into the limelight. It's a serviceable weapon for sure, can be used in most PvE activities without issue, but it's just kinda there. It simply exists. The Kvass Tov 7G0X is a new auto rifle added in Rise of Iron. Unfortunately, it went from nostalgia trip to immediate vault shelving rather quickly. It claims to be a jack-of-all-trades kind of weapon, but it's more like a four of clubs kind of weapon. Just because it is versatile doesn't mean that it's actually that good. On top of the fact that auto rifles are just not very good right now, this thing is doomed to sit in your vault until it gets some serious love. A C+ in both PvE and PvP. Moving to pulse rifles, not too many shifts here. Bad Juju gets an A+ in PvE and a B+ to an A- in PvP. Bad Juju continues to be a great PvE option, giving you non-stop shooting and tons of super energy. It works well in every PvE activity too, especially solo. In PvP, while it is a high rate of fire pulse, it does have a decent amount of kick to it, making it not as strong as some of the legendary options available. Red Death gets an A in PvE and a C+ in PvP. Red Death also continues to be a great PvE option for reasons different to Bad Juju. It is simply a reliable workhorse weapon. It's not flashy, it's just gonna keep you alive and kill a lot of stuff. However, in PvP, it's getting knocked down a little bit because of the meta. It is usable, but if you're taking on some of the more powerful weapons in the Crucible, it's just not going to be able to keep up against those weapons. No Time to Explain remains a B+ in PvE and a B in PvP. It is another one of those weapons that is simply there. It's not doing anything remarkable by any means, but it's not so terribly bad that it is unusable. I actually rather like it in PvE as a gun, but it is simply in the mid-tier. New to Rise of Iron is Outbreak Prime. Outbreak Prime gets an A+ to an S rating in PvE activities with fallen enemies, with a slightly lower rating everywhere else, and a B+ in PvP. The Siva nanites against fallen enemies are just stupidly strong, doing ridiculously high damage, but against non-fallen is simply okay. It's not too much of a threat. In PvP, Outbreak Prime is actually pretty good with a tight recoil pattern and good range. If you can get the nanites from a previous kill to attack something else, you're very likely to win that gunfight. Next up, we have hand cannons. Hawkmoon is getting a downgrade everywhere. In PvE, it's still a pretty strong weapon, but it struggles in endgame activities because it's not able to one-shot headshot some vital enemies that I think it should be able to. In PvP, it still has consistency issues where other legendary hand cannons do not, making it a liability rather than a solid option. The first curse isn't moving anywhere with a B to a B plus in PvE and a C plus to a B in PvP. Its buffs from many months back made it into a pretty good weapon and nothing has really changed since then. It's very good for short PvE skirmishes where you can maximize the full reload with its bonus. In PvP, it has limited success. Even with well-placed shots, you have to rely on the enemy missing some of their shots a little bit because you just can't shoot the weapon fast enough. Ace of Spades gets a B plus in PvE and a B in PvP. Another weapon that simply exists, the perk combination is nice but isn't game-changing in any way. Its recoil is pretty rough without the stability perk. In PvP, there are simply too many other good options to give this any consideration. The Last Word gets a D plus to a C minus in PvE and an A to an A plus in PvP. Last Word has very little value in PvE at the moment, and I don't think that will ever change. You'll likely have ammo issues, and you don't really want to be hip firing in PvE. In PvP, as much as I hear people say how bad the Last Word is, you can't deny the fact that in the past 3 months of trials, it has been in the top 3 most used weapons 9 out of those 12 weeks according to DestinyTrialsReport.com. Bad weapons simply do not do that. Whether it's used to combo with a body sniper shot or to simply kill someone in one of the fastest ways possible, the Last Word, despite repeated nerfs, is still a force to be reckoned with. Thorn is back, but at the moment it's not too impressive. A C plus in both PvE and PvP, and even that's being a little generous. To be fair, it's never really been a very strong PvE weapon, and that'll likely continue without significant changes. In PvP, it lost a lot of range, and that has been its undoing. The thing also has a good amount of kick to it, which doesn't really help its case. Scout rifles are last on the primary list and historically untouched by balance changes. This update will operate in the same way. Mite multi-tool is an A in PvE and an A to A plus in PvP. Mite is untouchable at this point. I don't think we'll ever see a buff or nerf to the weapon ever again. It is a fantastic weapon in all aspects of the game. A big magazine for PvE needs and a fast killing weapon for PvP needs. This is the only weapon that some people will ever want. Boolean Gemini gets a B plus to A minus in PvE and a B to B plus in PvP. Boolean Gemini is another one of those weapons that just exists, but is slightly better than the likes of, say, Ace of Spades or No Time to Explain. It is a very solid weapon with low recoil that kills stuff very well. However, I think the aim down sights is a little off-putting for some players. It feels a little awkward to look down, which can deter some people. On top of that, there are so many legendary scout options available to the point where Boolean Gemini just doesn't stand out enough to warrant taking the exotic slot. Jade Rabbit gets a B in PvE and a B plus to A minus in PvP. I've never liked Jade for PvE. Even if you can infinitely refill your magazine, I've never liked the concept of intentionally going for the body, then to the head. I would just rather headshot. In PvP, I think Jade Rabbit continues to be a sleeper and undervalued weapon in the community. On maps like Frontier, Jade can easily destroy people in 3 shots from stupidly long distances. With proper positioning, it can be incredibly obnoxious to fight against, but because it can still be challenged by high rate of fire pulses from a large amount of distances, it's not quite in the top tier, but it's close. Talon is a weapon that has a variable rating depending on how you use it. If you use it where you save your super to take advantage of the bonus, then I think it is the best weapon in the game when you have your super in both PvE and PvP. However, if you are actively using your super, then it is simply just another scout rifle. It's a good scout rifle, good stats, but nothing a legendary scout couldn't do. Finally, Touch of Malice is getting a B to B plus in PvE and a C in PvP. With the nerf to Blessing of Light's synergy with this weapon and the fact that we are no longer playing King's Fall as the endgame, Touch of Malice has all but faded away. With disciplined shooting, Touch of Malice isn't too shabby, but for a lot of players, it's not worth the risk. In PvP, I wouldn't even bother, since the damage you suffer is not worth the trade-off in a lot of cases. Those are your primary exotic weapon ratings. We'll be back very, very soon with special and heavy weapon ratings. If you enjoyed this video, a positive rating would be appreciated. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.